Tell the truth. Or at least don't lie. Do not do things that you hate. Act so that you can tell the truth about how you act. Pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. If you have to choose, be the one who does things instead of the one who is seen to do things. Pay attention. Assume that the person you are listening to might know something you need to know. Listen to them hard enough so that they will share it with you. Plan and work diligently to maintain the romance in your relationships. Be careful who you share good news with. Be careful who you share bad news with. Make at least one thing better every single place you go. Imagine who you could be, and then aim single-mindedly at that. Do not allow yourself to become arrogant or resentful. Try to make one room in your house as beautiful as possible. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. Work as hard as you possibly can on at least one thing and see what happens. If old memories still make you cry, write them down carefully and completely. Maintain your connections with people. Do not carelessly denigrate social institutions or artistic achievement. Treat yourself as if you were someone that you are responsible for helping. Ask someone to do you a small favor so that he or she can ask you to do one in the future. Make friends with people who want the best for you. Do not try to rescue someone who does not want to be rescued. And be very careful about rescuing someone who does. Nothing well done is insignificant. Set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. Dress like the person you want to be. Be precise in your speech. Stand up straight. Stand up straight. With your shoulders back. Don't avoid something frightening if it stands in your way. But don't do unnecessarily dangerous things. Do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. Do not transform your wife into a maid. Do not hide unwanted things in the fog. Notice that opportunity lurks where responsibility has been abdicated. Read something written by someone great. Pet a cat when you encounter one on the street. Do bother children when they are skateboarding. Don't let bullies get away with it. Write a letter to the government. You see something that needs fixing, and propose a solution. Remember that what you do not yet know is more important than what you already know. Be grateful. In spite of your suffering.
With the things our senses experience, especially those that entice us with pleasure or frighten us with pain, or are loudly trumpeted by pride. To understand those things, how stupid, contemptible, grimy, decaying, and dead they are, that's what our intellectual powers are for.
Speed with which all of them vanish, the objects in the world, and the memory of them in time, of them in time. Speed with which all of them vanish, the objects in the world, and the memory of them in time, of them in time.
Understand what those people really amount to, whose opinions and voices constitute fame, and what dying is. And if you look at it in the abstract and break down your imaginary ideas of it by logical analysis, you realize that it's nothing but a process of nature, which only children can be scared of. And not just a process of nature, but a necessary one.
Which all of them vanish, the objects in the world, and the memory of them in time, of them in time. Speed with which all of them vanish, the objects in the world, and the memory of them in time, of them in time.
does so, and how that part is conditioned when he does. How man grasps God with what part of himself he does so, and how that part is conditioned when he does. How man grasps God with what part of himself he does so, and how that part is conditioned when he does. How man grasps God with what part of himself he does so, and how that part is conditioned when he does.
If I were the devil, if I were the devil, if I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness, and I'd have a third of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree. So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve. Do as you please. To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old I would teach to pray after me, Our Father, which art in Washington. And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. If I were the devil, I'd soon have families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves. Until each in its turn was consumed. And with promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerizing media fanning the flame. If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellect, but neglect to discipline emotions, just let those run wild. Until before you knew it, you'd have to have drug-sniffing dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door. Within a decade, I'd have prisons overflowing. I'd have judges promoting pornography. Soon I could evict God from the courthouse, then from the schoolhouse, and then from the houses of Congress. And in his own churches, I would substitute psychology for religion and deify science. I would lure priests and pastors into misusing boys and girls and church money. If I were the devil, I'd make the symbol of Easter an egg and the symbol of Christmas a bottle. If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who want it until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. What'll you bet? I couldn't get whole states to promote gambling as the way to get rich. I would caution against extremes in hard work, in patriotism, in moral conduct. I would convince the young that marriage is old-fashioned, that swinging is more fun, that what you see on TV is the way to be. And thus I could undress you in public, and I could lure you into bed with diseases for which there is no cure. In other words, if I were the devil, well, I'd just keep right on doing what he's doing. If I were the devil, if I were the devil, if I were the devil, if I were the devil,
But by this means of effortless effort, the individual changes his policy. And a good example of this method of changing is in the selection of an adequate vocal coach if you intend to take singing lessons. In the, shall we say, robusto style, the principal problem was to open your mouth and bellow. And nearly all, or many, of the older singers were quite content and happy if they could rattle the chandeliers in the back of the opera house. Then it was gradually discovered that this was the best way to ruin a voice that there was. These voices were damaged, and damaged terribly. Today we know that the best way to learn to vocalize is to reduce effort. Today we know that the best way to learn to vocalize is to reduce effort. The principal problem that every singer has to get rid of is his own throat. If he could lose it, he would sing better. Get his mind off of the noise he is making. Relax. And allow the breath to move as it will. And if he controls the breath with a minimum of mental energy, he will produce a pure tone. Well, if he gets behind it and shoves with everything he has, he will develop only a badly pressured, badly trained voice. Today we know that the best way to learn to vocalize is to reduce effort. Today we know that the best way to learn to vocalize is to reduce effort. Same thing in life. Same thing in life. The purpose of life, the economy of life, is to use a minimum amount of energy to attain maximum results. Minimum amount of energy, maximum result. Minimum amount of energy, maximum result. Minimum amount of energy, maximum result. Same thing in life. Minimum amount of energy, maximum result. Same thing in life. Minimum amount of energy, maximum result. Minimum amount of energy, maximum result. Minimum amount of energy, maximum result. Same thing in life. Minimum amount of energy,
War is a nightmare. War is awful. It is indifferent and devastating and evil. War is hell. But war is also an incredible teacher, a brutal teacher. And it teaches you lessons that you will not forget. In war, you are forced to see humanity at its absolute worst. And you are also blessed to see humanity in its most glorious moments. War teaches you about sorrow and loss and pain. And it teaches you about the preciousness and the fragility of human life. And in that fragility teaches you about death. But war also teaches you about brotherhood and honor and humility and leadership. And unfortunately, war teaches you the most when things go wrong. And in that fragility, war teaches you about death. But war also teaches you about brotherhood and honor and humility and leadership. And unfortunately,
all the benefits in life come from compound interest. Whether it's in relationships or making money or in learning, compound interest is a marvelous force. You start out with 1x what you have, and then if you increase 20% a year for 30 years, it's not that you got 30 years times 20% added on. It was compounding. So it just grew and grew and grew until you suddenly got a massive amount of whatever it is, whether it's goodwill or love or relationships or money. All the benefits in life come from compound interest. All the benefits in life come from compound interest. Long-term games with long-term people. Long-term games with long-term people. Long-term games are good not just for compound interest, they're also good for trust. For example, you're in Silicon Valley where people are doing business with each other and they know each other, they trust each other, then they do right by each other because they know this person will be around for the next game. But essentially, if you want to be successful, you have to work with other people. You have to figure out who can you trust over a long, long period of time that you can just keep playing the game with them. So that compound interest and high trust will make it easier to play the game and will let you collect the major reward, which are usually at the end of the cycle. All the benefits in life come from compound interest. All the benefits in life come from compound interest. Long-term games with long-term people. Long-term games with long-term people. So those people have to signal that they're going to be around for a long time, that they're ethical, and their ethics are visible to their actions. When you've been doing business with somebody, you're friends with somebody for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, it just gets better and better. Because you trust them so easy, the friction goes down, you can do bigger and bigger things together. For example, the simplest one is getting married to someone, having kids and raising children. That's compound interest. Right, investing in those relationships. Those relationships end up being invaluable compared to more casual relationships. All the benefits in life come from compound interest. All the benefits in life come from compound interest. Long-term games with long-term people. Long-term games with long-term people. All the benefits in life come from compound interest. All the benefits in life come from compound interest. Long-term games with long-term people. Long-term games with long-term people.
Alexander Solzhenitsyn, you may or may not know, was a prisoner in the Soviet Gulag concentration camp system that, by his report at least, killed 60 million people. Solzhenitsyn, he had a pretty nasty life. I mean, first of all, he's on the Russian front, which was a nasty place to be. Then he was captured by the Germans, and they didn't like Russians. So they put them in separate prisoners of war camps. Partly because Stalin, who was the consummate paranoid, wouldn't sign the Geneva Convention on the treatment of prisoners of war. So the Germans set up extra POW camps for the Russians, and they starved generally so badly that if other POWs were in the vicinity, they'd throw food packages over the wire, even though they themselves weren't particularly well fed. The war ends and the Russians win, and Solzhenitsyn goes back to Russia, right? And what happens? He's thinking, you know, wow, this is over. We helped defend the fatherland. We're going to get, if not a hero's welcome, at least some welcome. But Stalin figured, no. These Russians had been to the West. They were contaminated by their exposure to the Western economic system. And as a consequence of that, they posed a threat to the integrity of the Soviet state, so he just threw them all in concentration camps. So fine. So Solzhenitsyn's sitting there in this concentration camp on a coal pile which contained this kind of clay that his compatriots would eat because they were so damn hungry that it was better to have the clay in their stomach than nothing at all. And he thought, all right. What the hell did I do to get here? What the hell did I do to get here? What did I do to get here? What the hell did I do to get here? What the hell did I do to get here? Which is really a remarkable thing to think, right? Because, like, there was the Second World War, and that probably couldn't be pinned directly on him. And then there's Stalin, who was, you know, really one of the world's worst monsters. And then there's the concentration camp, the POW camp. A lot of things happened to Solzhenitsyn, but he said he had nothing but time to think in this concentration camp, and he wasn't really that happy with the way things turned out. So he made a vow in the camp, and the vow was this, that he's going to go back over his whole life, right from day one, and try to remember every time he ever did something he thought was wrong. He thought, right? Not someone else, but that gave his conscience a pang. And he said, well, since I don't have anything better to do, I'm going to spend like the next 10 years seeing if I can undo all those little knots in my soul that I tied. And the consequence of that was that he wrote a book called The Gulag Archipelago. A 3-volume book, 1,900 pages long. He memorized it because there wasn't any paper and pencil available for him in prison. And then it circulated in the underground in the Soviet Union for years before it got published in the West, published in 1975. Definitely one of the literary events that brought down the Soviet Union. Definitely. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? I think this one guy, right, got numbers tattooed on his arm. He's skinny as a rail. He's 3/4 dead. He's been beat to death in 15 different ways. He decides, under completely unreasonable circumstances, that he's going to take personal responsibility for the position that he happens to find himself in. The consequence of that, 25 years later, is that Solzhenitsyn is still around, but the Soviet Union isn't. What the hell did I do to get here? What did I do to get here? What the hell did I do to get here? What the hell did I do to get here? be the way the world works. Now, can it? But then you think this too, like, do we really know how the world works? We've had a pretty nasty century in the last 100 years, right? We had the Nazis, we had Mao Zedong, we had the recent tragedies in Africa. We don't seem to learn anything about genocide. Someone like Solzhenitsyn says, well, you know, might be your fault. Might be your fault. Why? What are you ignoring? Good question. Can you make peace with your own family? It's not so easy, right? Probably no easier than making peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Why? What are you ignoring? Good question. Can you make peace with your own family? It's not so easy, right? Probably no easier than making peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Thousands of years ago, Plato proposed that all knowledge was remembering. Of course, we don't believe that today because we believe we gather knowledge as a consequence of contact with the world. But you'll see today that the knowledge that I'm going to share with you will strike a deep chord of remembering, and it's because everything that you've done throughout your life is in one way or another predicated on what I'm going to tell you today. I'm going to demonstrate this in a peculiar way, I think, because I'm going to start by telling you a story. And the reason I'm going to do that is because models of the world that include phenomena like consciousness and emotions and motivations and actions and interaction are generally portrayed formally in stories and not in scientific theories. And it does turn out to be that stories themselves have an identifiable structure, even a grammar that makes them comprehensible. Furthermore, it turns out that even the simplest stories, especially if they're elegantly constructed, have an unbelievably profound underlying meaning. Underlying meaning. Unbelievably profound underlying meaning. And you can frequently see this most particularly in children's stories. I remember I showed my son when he was 4 years old the Disney movie Pinocchio, which on the surface of it is a very strange tale, right? It's a wooden puppet who wants to become real, so he has to rescue his father from the belly of a whale.
Whale or no whale, I've got to find my father and rescue him. I've got to go to him, Jimmy. Goodbye.
Pinocchio is a deep, deep story.
Father, I'm gonna save you.
It has echoes that go back 3,000 or 4,000 years to the earliest stories that we know. And it's so rich with information that a child can watch it over and over and over and over. I think my son watched Pinocchio 30 times. Why? Well, it's either because a child can't tell the difference between fantasy and reality, or it's because there's something to those stories that's much more potent than we actually consciously understand. You'll find that in the top 10 highest grossing movies of all time are 4 Disney movies that are animated fairy tales, essentially retelling of mythological stories. They strike a deep chord. Why? War. Underlying meaning. Underlying meaning. Unbelievably profound underlying meaning. Shakespeare was, of course, a great literary figure, said it perhaps better than anyone else has, which is not surprising because he said many things better than anyone else has. He said all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. And so, following from that, you can imagine that a story is no more about the props in the world than a play that you go see is about the props on the stage. A drama is about the manner in which people actually exist, the emotions that they feel, the motivational states they encounter, the problems they have to solve when they interact with each other. And the play's the thing from that particular perspective in which we can capture those aspects of our experience that are not only real, but essentially human. Essentially human. Underlying meaning. Underlying meaning. Unbelievably profound. Underlying meaning.
And the entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts.
The substance of the tree is carbon. Where did that come from? That comes from the air. It's carbon dioxide from the air. People look at trees and they think it comes out of the ground. The plants grow out of the ground. But if you ask where the substance comes, you find out where does it come from. Trees come out of the air? They surely come out of the air. No, they come out of the air. No, they come out of the air. The carbon dioxide in the air goes into the tree and it changes it, kicking out the oxygen and pushing the oxygen away from the carbon and leaving the carbon substance with water. Water comes out of the ground. Only it came out of the air, didn't it? And down from the sky. So in fact, most of the tree, almost all of the tree is out of the ground. I'm sorry, it's out of the air. Now, of course, I told you, the oxygen and carbon stick together very tight. How is it the tree is so smart and managed to take the carbon dioxide, just the carbon oxygen nicely combined, and undo that? Life. Life has some mysterious force. No, the sun is shining. And it's the sunlight that comes down and knocks this oxygen away from the carbon. So it takes sunlight to get the plant to work. And so the sun, all the time, is doing the work of separating the oxygen away from the carbon. The oxygen is some kind of terrible byproduct, which it spits back into the air, and leaving the carbon and water and stuff to make the substance of the tree. Then when we take the substance of the tree and stick it in the fireplace, there's all the oxygen made by these trees. And all the carbon would much prefer to be close together again. And once you let the heat to get it started, it continues and makes an awful lot of activity while it's going back together again. And all this nice light and everything comes out. And everything is being undone. You're going back from carbon and oxygen, back to carbon dioxide. And the light and heat that's coming out, that's the light and heat of the sun that went in. The sun that went in. So it's sort of stored sun that's coming out when you burn a log. So it's sort of stored sun that's coming out when you burn a log.
So it's sort of stored sun that's coming out when you burn a log. So it's sort of stored sun that's coming out when you burn a log.
So it's sort of stored sun that's coming out when you burn a log. So it's sort of stored sun that's coming out when you burn a log. So it's sort of stored sun that's coming out
In exploring the theme of the web of life, I have thus far discussed two principal topics. First, the web considered as selectivity, experience considered as what we pay attention to on the one hand and what we ignore on the other. And I showed how the way in which we pay attention to the world creates, isolates, that we call particular things, events, and persons, and they seem to be disconnected and to be alone because we ignore the connection between them. And I used the analogy of weaving, where the threads go underneath and join on the back in a way that is not seen on the front. So you might say in the unconscious, although I don't particularly like that word because it makes it seem as if it was something rather dead. But on the unconscious side of life, as on the back of the weaving or the back of the embroidery, there are connections which are not published. 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 Now, in the second part of the theme was the web as mutuality. When I discussed the way the existence of a web, the existence of cloth, or anything like that, depends on a mutual support of the warp and the woof. And this miraculous thing occurs that when the things support each other, being comes into being. Cloth comes into being. And so in exactly the same way, our world is a manifestation of relativity. And this requires a balance, a combination, a relationship of opposites in every domain of life. And although these opposites are explicitly different and even antagonistic, they are implicitly one. Implicitly one. They are implicitly one. And that's the secret. There are connections which are not published. A relationship of opposites in every domain of life. There are connections which are not published. There are connections which are not published. A relationship of opposites in every domain of life. There are connections which are not published. They are implicitly one. And that's the secret. See, there are these two secrets that we went into. The connection between what are supposed to be separate things and events, and the mutual unity between what are manifestly, that is to say, openly, for purposes of publication, opposites. Now, I'm going to take two other aspects of the web. There are connections which are not published. A relationship of opposites in every domain of life. There are connections which are not published. There are connections which are not published. A relationship of opposites in every domain of life. There are connections which are not published. They are implicitly one. And that's the secret. A relationship of opposites in every domain of life. There are connections which are not published. There are connections which are not published. A relationship of opposites in every domain of life. There are connections which are not published. They are implicitly one.
Okay, well, this is very serious, and I don't know if I should address it because I'm somewhat tired, but I'll give it a shot because it's important. Now, it's very serious and troublesome question. I plan on taking my own life very soon. Why shouldn't I? I'm going to assume this isn't a casual question. You know, it's being put out because it's important for the purposes of display. Well, the first thing I would say is you have to think very carefully through the consequences of that for other people. So I've had clients in my clinical practice who have never recovered from the suicide of a family member. Decades later, they're still torturing themselves about it. And so that's what you leave behind. Maybe you're feeling life has been twisted against you and that people deserve to suffer for the misery that they impose upon you. But I would say, think very, very carefully before you go down that route. No, it's a terrible thing to leave people with. Part of the reason that suicide has been illegal in most societies is because it absolutely devastates the people you leave behind. And you might think, well, those people would be better off without me. And if you get really depressed, you can think that way. And you can even get to the point where you can't think any other way than that. If you're at the point where you can't think any other way than that, then you should tell someone and you should go to the hospital. Because that can happen, you know, it can happen if you get depressed. There are treatments for depression, you know, and many of them work for some people. They certainly beat the hell out of suicide. Even if they have some negative side effects, and sometimes they do, quite frequently they do, the negative side effects aren't fatal. I mean, there's lots of reasons that people get depressed that are very, very complex. Don't give up hope and do something final before you explore all possible options. And if you haven't talked to a psychologist, you haven't talked to a psychiatrist, you haven't tried antidepressants, you haven't revealed to your family or people that care for you that this is how you're feeling, then you owe it to yourself and them to explore every possible avenue before you take such a step. That's the other thing, you know, you have intrinsic value, and you can't just cancel it and run to an end. You leave a hole in the fabric of being itself. A wise man that I once worked with said, you can always commit suicide tomorrow. You only get to decide that once. And you can put it off. So I would say just put it off. And then put it off some more. And see what you can do to put yourself together. If you're so hopeless that you have a suicidal plan, tell someone for God's sake, tell them, or go to a hospital and tell them. And for sure, try antidepressants. What the hell do you have to lose? Do everything you possibly can to address the issue before you do something like that. And do give some thought to the people that you're going to leave behind you. Because believe me, you may just absolutely wipe them out in a way that they will never recover from. You cannot fix someone's suicide. You're stuck with it. You torture yourself for the rest of your life. If I would have only known, if I would have only said something different. Don't be so sure that your life is yours to take. You don't own yourself the way that you own an object. You have a moral obligation to yourself as a locus of divine value, let's say. You can't treat that casual. It's wrong. So those are the reasons. Explore everything you can explore to put yourself back on your feet. All the things. There's all sorts of treatments for depression. Don't leave people around you with that to suffer from for the rest of their lives. Don't underestimate your value in the world. And don't underestimate the fact that suicide is wrong. So those are 4 reasons why you shouldn't end your life soon. wise man that I once worked with said, you can always commit suicide tomorrow. You only get to decide that once. And you can put it off. So I would say just put it off. Put it off. Put it off. You only need to decide that once. You can put it off. So I would say just put it off. Put it off.
Deep in the human unconscious is a pervasive need for a logical universe that makes sense. Sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. But the real universe is always one step beyond logic. One step beyond logic. One step beyond logic. There is in all things a pattern that is part of our universe. It has symmetry, elegance, and grace. Those qualities you find always in that which the true artist captures. That which the true artist captures. You can find it in the turning of the seasons, that which the true artist captures, in the way sand traits along a ridge, in the branch clusters of the creosote bush, or the pattern of its leaves. We try to copy these patterns in our lives, in our society, seeking the rhythms, the dances, the forms that comfort. There is in all things a pattern that is part of our universe. It has symmetry, elegance, and grace. Those qualities you find always in that which the true artist captures. That which the true artist captures. You can find it in the turning of the seasons. That which the true artist captures. Yet, it is impossible to see peril in the finding of ultimate perfection. Ultimate perfection. Ultimate perfection. Peril in the finding. It is clear that the ultimate pattern contains its own fixity. In such perfection, all things move towards death. There is in all things a pattern that is part of our universe. It has symmetry, elegance, and grace. Those qualities you find always in that which the true artist captures. That which the true artist captures. You can find it in the turning of the seasons. That which the true artist captures. The world is supported by four things: the learning of the wise, the justice of the great, the prayers of the righteous, and the valor of the brave. But all of these things are as nothing without a ruler who knows the art of ruling. Make that the science of your tradition. All life is the learning of the wise, the justice of the great, the prayers of the righteous, and the valor of the brave.
I'm quite enamored of lobsters, as some of you might know, because I found out. This just blew me away when I found it out. Just exactly how much continuity there was in the neurochemistry of human beings and the neurochemistry of animals. Absolutely staggering. It's the sort of thing that makes the fact of evolution something like self-evident. Random mutation and natural selection is the only way you can solve the problem of how to deal with an environment that's complex beyond your ability to comprehend. You generate endless variants because God only knows what the hell's going to happen next. Almost all of them die because they're failures, and a couple propagate. And the environment keeps moving around like a giant snake. You never know what it's going to do next. And so the best you can do is say, well, here's 30 things that might work. And 28 of them are going to perish. Anyways, back to the lobsters. 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 So these creatures engage in dominance disputes, so it really is the toughest lobster that wins. And what's so cool about the lobster is that when a lobster wins, he flexes and gets bigger, so he looks bigger. It's because he's a winner. It's like he's advertising that. And the neurochemical system that makes him flex is serotonergic. And you think, well, what the hell does that mean? I'll tell you what it means. It's the same chemical that's affected by antidepressants in human beings. And so, if you're depressed, you're a defeated lobster. You're like this. I'm small. Things are dangerous. Defeated lobster. You're like this. I'm small. I don't want to fight. You give somebody an antidepressant, it's like they stretch, and then they're ready to take on the world again. Well, if you give lobsters who just got defeated in a fight serotonin, then they stretch out and they'll fight again. Like we separated from those creatures on the evolutionary timescale somewhere between 350 and 600 million years ago, and the damn neurochemistry is the same. And so that's another indication of just how important hierarchies of authority are. Back to the lobsters. 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 Back to the lobsters.
Don't want utopian comfort and certainty. They want adventure and chaos and uncertainty. Human beings don't want utopian comfort and certainty. They want adventure and chaos and uncertainty. Satan, in Milton's Paradise Lost, Satan decides that he can do without the transcendent. Without God. He can do without God. He can do without God. And that's why he foments rebellion. It's something like that. Then the consequence of that was that as soon as Satan decided that what he knew was sufficient and that he could do without the transcendent, which you might think about as the domain outside of what you know, something like that, immediately he was in hell. Things get large, and then they get too large, and then they collapse. And so, in 2008, when the politicians said, too big to fail, they got got something truly backwards. The statement was reversed. It should have been so big it had to fail. Human beings don't want utopian comfort and certainty. They want adventure and chaos and uncertainty. Human beings don't want utopian comfort and certainty. They want adventure and chaos and uncertainty. When I read Paradise Lost, I was studying totalitarianism, and I thought, the poet, the true poet, like a prophet, is someone who has intimations of the future. Has intimations of the future. And maybe that's because the poetic mind, the philosophical or prophetic mind, is a pattern detector. And there are people who can detect the underlying, it's like the melody of a nation. Melody as in song. The song of a nation. And can see how it's going to develop across the centuries. You see that in Nietzsche, because Nietzsche, for example, around 1860 or so, he prophesied what was going to happen in the 20th century. He said specifically that the specter of communism would kill millions of people in the 20th century. It's an amazing prophecy. Some people are very good at detecting patterns, and Milton, I think, was of that sort. I think he had intimations of what was coming as human rationality became more and more powerful, and technology became more and more powerful. Human beings don't want utopian comfort and certainty. They want adventure and chaos and uncertainty. Human beings don't want utopian comfort and certainty. They want adventure and chaos and uncertainty. And then Milton's warning was the rational mind that generates a production and then worships it as if it's absolute immediately occupies hell. And that's what I think the story of the Tower of Babel is about. It's a warning against the expansion of a system until it encompasses everything. It's a warning against totalitarian presumption. And so there's a utopian kind of vision there as well. As we can build a structure that's so large and encompassing that it can replace heaven itself. And so that the very notion of a utopia was anti-human because we're not built for static utopia. We're built for a dynamic situation where there's demands placed on us and where there's the optimal amount of uncertainty. Human beings don't want utopian comfort and certainty. They want adventure and chaos and uncertainty. Human beings don't want utopian comfort and certainty. They want adventure and chaos and uncertainty. Human beings don't want utopian comfort and certainty. They want adventure and chaos and uncertainty. Human beings don't want utopian comfort and certainty. They want adventure and chaos and uncertainty.
For 7 days and rests the seventh. It's necessary to have a holiday. Holiday is holy day. The point is that a holiday tied together with strings. So the holes are very, very important. These are the holy days. You see the holes. This all goes together. Really, deep down, we are, each one of us, everything that there is. Doing it this way, and again that way, and again another way. Doing it this way, and again that way, and again another way. Really, deep down, we are, each one of us, everything that there is. Doing it this way, and again that way, and again another way. And that's what it keeps up doing forever and ever. So, there must be that interval. And it exists on all kinds of levels. It isn't simply that there is, for example, a sound, but it's sounded, is a vibration. And the sound goes on and off. Everything that we call sound is sound silence. There is no such thing as pure sound. You couldn't hear it. What you hear is that tap, 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 tap against the eardrum. But it happens very fast, so that you get more of an impression of sound than you do of silence. That between every little undulation of sound, there is also an interval. When you listen to music, you hear a melody. When you listen to music, you hear a melody. When you listen to music, you hear a melody. When you listen to music, you hear a melody. When you listen to music, you hear a melody. When you listen to music, you hear a melody. Really, deep down, we are, each one of us, everything that there is. Doing it this way, and again that way, and again another way. Doing it this way, and again that way, and again another way. Really, deep down, we are, each one of us, everything that there is. Doing it this way, and again that way, and again another way. And that's what it keeps up doing forever and ever. When you listen to music, you hear a melody. When you listen to music, you hear a melody. When you listen to music, you hear a melody. When you listen to music, you hear a melody. But what you hear, actually, that makes the melody significant are the steps between the tones, what we call the intervals. And a person who doesn't hear intervals is tone deaf. He only hears noises. He doesn't hear the steps. So, that interval between whatever happens is as important as what happens. So we'll call these two things, the sound and the silence, the life and the death, somewhat analogous in weaving to the warp and the woof. Now, look at the marvelous way in which warp and woof go together. A piece of cloth is an extraordinary thing when you consider it's made of a line of string. There's something that always struck me as a child. Fabulous. That string, just thread, could turn into cloth. Why should it hang together? How improbable. Something that always struck me as a child. That string, just thread, could turn into cloth.
Don't partner with cynics and pessimists. Their beliefs are self-fulfilling.
Why should it hang together?
Essentially, to create things, you have to be a rational optimist. Rational in the sense that you have to be able to see the world for what it really is, and yet you have to be optimistic about your own capabilities and your capability to get things done. We all know people who are consistently pessimistic, who will shoot down everything. Everyone in their life has like the helpful, critical guy, right? He thinks he's being helpful, but he's actually being critical, and he's a downer on everything. That person will not only never do anything great in their lives, they'll prevent other people around them from doing something great. They think their job is to shoot holes in things. And it's okay to shoot holes in things as long as you come with a solution. There's also the classic like military line, either lead, follow, or get out of the way. These people want a fourth option where they don't want to lead, they don't want to follow, but they don't want to get out of the way. They want to tell you why the thing's not going to work. And all the really successful people I know have a very strong action bias. They just do things. The easiest way to figure out if something's viable or not is by doing it. So if you want to be successful in life, creating wealth, or having good relationships, or even being happy, you need to have an action bias towards getting what you want. And you have to be optimistic about it. You've got one life on this planet. Why not try to do something big? You've got one life on this planet. Why not try to do something big? This is the beauty of Elon Musk and why I think he inspires so many people. It's just that he takes on really, really big, audacious tasks, and he provides an example for people to think big. Think big. And it takes a lot of work to build even small things. I don't think the corner grocery store owner is working any less hard than Elon Musk or pouring any less sweat and toil into it. Maybe even more. But for whatever reason, education, circumstance, they didn't get the chance to think as big, so the outcome's not as big. So it's just better to think big, obviously rationally within your means to stay optimistic. The cynics and the pessimists, what they're really saying, they're basically saying, I've given up. I don't think I can do anything. And so the world to me just looks like a world where nobody can do anything. And so why should you go do something? Because if you fail, then I'm right, which is great. But if you succeed, then you just make me look bad. You've got one life on this planet. Why not try to do something big? You've got one life on this planet. Why not try to do something big? This is the beauty of Elon Musk.
I'd rather be optimistic and wrong than pessimistic and right. Than pessimistic and right. Than pessimistic and right. I'd rather be optimistic and wrong than pessimistic and right. Than pessimistic and right. Than pessimistic and right.
There's a completely rational frame on why you should be an optimist. Historically, if you go back 2,000 years, 5,000 years, 10,000 years, two people are wandering through the jungle. They hear a tiger. One's an optimist who says, oh, it's not headed our way. The other one says, I'm a pessimist, I'm out of here. And the pessimist runs and survives, and the optimist gets eaten. So we're descended from pessimists. We're genetically hardwired to be pessimists. But modern society is far, far safer. There are no tigers wandering down the street. It's very unlikely that you will end up in total ruin, although you should avoid total ruin. Much more likely, the upside is unlimited and the downside is limited. Adapting for modern society means overriding your pessimism and taking slightly irrationally optimistic bets because the upside is unlimited. If you start the next SpaceX or Tesla or Uber, you can make billions of dollars of value for society and for yourself and change the world. And if you fail, what's the big deal? You lost a few $1 million of investor money and they've got plenty more, and that's the bet they take, the chances that you will succeed. It made sense to be pessimistic in the past. It makes sense to be optimistic today, especially if you're educated and living in a first world country. The one thing you have to avoid is the risk of ruin. Ruin means stay out of jail, so don't do anything that's illegal. Stay out of total catastrophic loss. Stay out of things that can be physically dangerous, hurt your body. You have to watch your health, and stay out of things that can cause you to lose all of your capital, all of your savings. So don't gamble everything at one go. You take rationally optimistic bets with big upside. You've got one life on this planet. Why not try to do something big? You've got one life on this planet. Why not try to do something big? You've got one life on this planet. Why not try to do something big? You've got one life on this planet. is the beauty of Elon Musk.
I'd rather be optimistic and wrong than pessimistic and right. Than pessimistic and right. Than pessimistic and right. I'd rather be optimistic and wrong than pessimistic and right. Than pessimistic and right. Than pessimistic and right.
Valley has learned that the upside is so great that you never look down on the Slavi kid who's wearing a hoodie and has like coffee at his shoes and just looks like a Slav, because you don't know if he's going to be the next Mark Zuckerberg or the next Reid Hoffman. So you got to treat everybody with respect. You got to look up to every possibility and opportunity, because the upside is so unlimited and the downside is so limited in the modern world. Kid who's wearing a hoodie and has like coffee at his shoes and just looks
It does seem to me that anyone who lives in the West, in the Western culture, this time in history, and in this place, and who isn't simultaneously grateful for that, is half blind, at least. Because it's never been better than this, and it could be so much worse. It's never been better than this, and it could be so much worse. It's never been better than this, and it could be so much worse. So much worse. So much worse. There was a paper published in Nature not so long ago, stating, for example, that an area twice the size of the U.S. has greened in the last 15 years. There's more forests in the Northern Hemisphere than there were 100 years ago, and more forests in India and China than there were 30 years ago. And then this has gone along with a massively improved standard of living. The child mortality rate in Africa is now the same as it was in Europe in 1952, which is a statistic that I just regard as absolutely miraculous. The rate of poverty is diminishing at an amazing rate, right? Between 2000 and 2012, we have poverty. It's never been better than this, and it could be so much worse. It's never been better than this, and it could be so much worse. It's never been better than this, and it could be so much worse. So much worse. So much worse. It's pretty hard on the Marxists, I would say, even though there is inequality, and inequality is a problem. First of all, it doesn't look like inequality can be placed at the feet of capitalism. It seems to me to be a far more intractable problem than that. Second, it's clear that the poor are getting richer despite the fact of inequality. And third, and this is hard on the environmentalists, I think, is that it turns out that if you get people's income up to about $5,000 a year in terms of gross domestic product, they actually start to care about the environment, which I suppose is because they're not worried about dying instantly that day or that week. And so we seem to be in this perverse situation for a pessimist where we can make people wealthy and we can make the world a better place simultaneously. It's never been better than this, and it could be so much worse. It's never been better than this, and it could be so much worse. It's never been better than this, and it could be so much worse. So much worse. So much worse. And it's highly likely that it will be so much worse, because for most of human history, so much worse is the norm.
Congratulations, the Kenya's graduating class of 2005.
There are these two young fish swimming along, and they happen to meet an older fish swimming the other way, who nods at them and says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" And the two young fish swim on for a bit, and then eventually one of them looks over at the other and goes, "What the hell is water?" What the hell is water? Swimming along. This is a standard requirement of U.S. commencement speeches, the deployment of didactic little parable-ish stories. The story thing turns out to be one of the better, less bullshitty conventions of the genre. But if you're worried that I plan to present myself here as the wise older fish explaining what water is to you younger fish, please don't be. I am not the wise old fish. The point of the fish story is merely that the most obvious, important realities are often the ones that are hardest to see and talk about. The story thing turns out to be one of the better. Stated as an English sentence, of course, this is just a banal platitude. But the fact is that in the day-to-day trenches of adult existence, banal platitudes can have a life or death importance. Or so I wish to suggest to you on this dry and lovely morning.
What the hell is water? 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 What the hell is water?
Of course, the main requirement of speeches like this is that I'm supposed to talk about your liberal arts education's meaning. To try to explain why the degree you're about to receive has actual human value instead of just a material payoff. So let's talk about the single most pervasive cliche in the commencement speech genre, which is that a liberal arts education is not so much about filling you up with knowledge as it is about, quote, teaching you how to think. If you're like me as a student, you've never liked hearing this, and you tend to feel a bit insulted by the claim that you've needed anybody to teach you how to think, since the fact that you even got admitted to a college this good seems like proof that you already know how to think. But I'm going to posit to you that the liberal arts cliche turns out not to be insulting at all. Because the really significant education in thinking that we're supposed to get in a place like this isn't really about the capacity to think, but rather about the choice of what to think about. If your total freedom of choice regarding what to think about seems too obvious to waste time discussing, I'd ask you to think about fish and water and to bracket for just a few minutes your skepticism about the value of the totally obvious.
What the hell is water? 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 What the hell is water?
Now there have been, in the past 200 years, a great many investigations and researches, some of them very pious, some of them very cynical, of the religions of the world, and certain quite constant motifs, basic themes have come out throughout the whole field. These universals, these continually recurring themes. Also, in each of the various areas, there are quite special, particular inflections, quite different from those in other areas. That is to say, we have the spectacle of continuity and consistency, and at the same time, differentiation. I want to speak tonight in a very general way to the main problems that these situations and these observations bring up. What are the functions, the human functions served by mythology? What are the functions, the human functions served by mythology? By symbolic forms, which have been served for 200,000 years and have sustained the race, even on the simplest level and even on the levels of the highest cultures. We all know the greatest monuments, the greatest architectural and art monuments are in celebration of these mysteries. I don't care where you turn. These are the things we now go by jet to see. What are the functions, the human functions served by mythology? What are the functions, the human functions served by mythology? By symbolic forms, which have been served for 200,000 years. Functions, the human functions served by mythology. What are the functions, the human functions served by mythology? By symbolic forms, which have been served for 200,000 years.
Self-esteem is like a virus. You catch it from other people. Low self-esteem is like a virus. You catch it from other people. You didn't get your low self-esteem necessarily because you were born with it. It's got to be a genetic component here. But mostly it comes from narcissists who have their own broken self-esteem, and they want you to have a broken self-esteem, and if you don't have it, they're going to give it to you. catch it from other people. And you can get rid of it. Just like you can get rid of it. Right? Low self-esteem is like a virus. You catch it from other people. Low self-esteem is like a virus. You catch it from other people. You do have a constitution. You do have immunity. But it takes a little while, just like any cold. The cold wins for a while, and then your natural immunity takes over. Your natural immunity can get you away from this low self-esteem that you caught from other people. It's not in you. It's something you caught. And you're going to beat the shit out of it. Just like your immune system will beat the shit out of 99% of you plus. Low self-esteem is like a virus. You catch it from other people. Low self-esteem is like a virus. You catch it from other people.
I've been lucky. I've been blessed. I've had a life that I would not trade with anyone in the world. When you talk about Ramadi, that was the highlight of my life. Because I was leading men in combat, which was something that I always wanted to do. And something that I felt that I was destined to do. And when I was in that situation, I knew that. I don't look back and say, oh, I wish I would have enjoyed that. No, I knew it then. This is it. This is it. This is it. This is what you have been waiting for your whole life, and what you really have been preparing for your whole life. And I was lucky to be there, and I was lucky to have incredible guys to work with. I was lucky enough to have guys that were so brave and so dedicated. I will use the word fearless, not that they didn't have fear, but that they overcame it all the time. And so I'd say if there's anything that I struggle with now, it's just that. Does anything else matter? And the answer is no. The answer is no. Nothing else matters. Nothing else is close. And so you have to deal with that. This is it. This is it. This is it. so happy that I could be part of it and that I was able to work with such tremendous guys. And I try and keep their memory alive. Every day. And I'm so happy that I could be part of it and that I was able to work with such tremendous guys. And I try and keep their memory alive.
We're going to go back to Boston.
Okay.
Okay, so you said that's really where things started for you. So you moved there when you were 13. First of all, like, what kind of kid were you in school?
If ADD is real, I certainly had it, and I was very, very interested in what I was interested in. I was very uninterested in people telling me what to do. Essentially couldn't wait to get out of school. But I would excel at things that I had interest in. Initially it was art. I wanted to be a comic book illustrator until I really got into martial arts. And martial arts became the focus of my life. Around 14, 15 years old, that's when I really became massively obsessed. And that was really the first thing that I ever did where I really didn't feel like a loser. Like I really felt like, oh, I actually have some talent. I actually can be exceptional. There's like something, because I grew up constantly moving, didn't really have a lot of friends. I would be new in this town. I'd get picked on. I wasn't a big kid. And there was a lot of issues with that psychologically. I didn't like being afraid of other kids. I didn't like not knowing what to do if I ran into kids. They were going to bully me and pick on me. Martial arts changed that 180 degrees. And then I became someone who I would be afraid of. I became the opposite of what I was. And then I became someone who I would be afraid of. I became the opposite of what I was. So what I was someone who was terrified of conflict, didn't know what to do. And what I became was a Taekwondo champion. I became a martial arts champion. I knew how to fight.
How did it come about?
It was very fortunate. I'd done a little bit of martial arts training. Then one day I was in Boston for a Red Sox game. And as I was walking home to the train station, I decided to go check out the Jae-Hun Kim Taekwondo Institute. It was right there. So I went up the stairs, and as I was walking up the stairs, a guy named John Lee was training. I heard this crazy sound. What it turned out to be this man kicking this bag and slamming his heel into this bag and having the chain snap and rattle and thud of his heel slamming into this leather bag. I got up there and I watched this guy work out. I couldn't believe a person could do that. I'd never seen anybody kick something so hard in real life. Anybody that had such incredible martial arts skill like this guy did, John Lee, who became a mentor of mine. That changed everything. I was there the next day. I talked to them. They gave me a brochure and a pamphlet. I was probably there every day of my life until I was 22 years old. Just completely by luck, wandered into one of the best schools in the world for Taekwondo. I just got lucky. I got really, really, really lucky. I became someone who I would be afraid of. I became the opposite of what I was. And then I became someone who I would be afraid of. I became the opposite of what I was. I had keys pretty quickly. Right away, my instructor recognized that I was pretty obsessed and I was physically pretty talented. So he had me teaching classes instead of paying. One of the best ways for someone to get good at martial arts is actually to teach. You actually refine your technique. You think about it more. I was 14 or 15 by the time I got to that school. I had my black belt by the time I was 17, and I was competing in the adult division by then. I won the state championship when I was 18, and I won it every year from then until I stopped. Luckily, with high school, kids heard about it. right away. One of the kids you go to school with is flying all over the country, kicking people in the head. They just avoided me. People avoided me. Junior and senior year, I'd already become this weird kid that was obsessed with martial arts. I spent most of my life, from the time I was 15 till I was 21, training and competing. I probably fought over 100 times, 100% singular, uniquely singular, but I avoided most of the pitfalls, high school partying and all that stuff. I didn't do that because I was scared of getting hurt. I was scared if I showed up for training hungover that I'd get beat up. I was scared of anything that would take even a tiny bit away from my performance as a fighter because I was obsessed with it. I became someone who I would be afraid of. You know, I became the opposite of what I was. And then I became someone who I would be afraid of. You know, I became the opposite of what I was.
I was just thinking that Jocko's kind of... A lot of people can be real father figures for me. I have such a desperation for that energy and that connection in my life that I will latch on to people or put them in a place where... Oh, I gotta tell you this. So, I saw my dad in a dream when I was in Hawaii, or in Maui. Sorry, when I was in Maui. And it was really crazy because I hadn't seen him in 20 years. Even in a vision. You know, when I had an adult vision. And I saw him. You know, when I saw him, and it was crazy. We were at it was kind of confusing. It was a dream, you know. And Robert De Niro was there, and Matthew McConaughey was there. And we were in Maui. My dad was in one room, eating at a table, and Matthew McConaughey and Robert De Niro were in another room. And my dad wanted to come and meet Matthew McConaughey, but he didn't want to meet Robert De Niro. And so I was trying to like mediate between the two of them. And finally, my dad and Matthew McConaughey got to meet each other, which doesn't mean anything, but it was just interesting to see my father. I hadn't seen him. I saw my dad in a dream. I saw my dad in a dream. I hadn't seen him in 20 years. Even in a vision. I saw my dad in a dream. I saw my dad in a dream. I hadn't seen him in 20 years. Even in a vision. You know, I'd seen him in pictures, and I'd seen him in just, you know, imagination what he looked like or something, but I hadn't seen him really. And it made me think that my dad lives in Hawaii or something, you know, like I was like, oh, is this where he's been? And it made me think, well, of course this is where he's been. This is where I would be. It is stunning. But yeah, I got to see my dad, man. I got to see him. It was I just didn't know. I just didn't know. I didn't know that he's been in Hawaii or been, you know, that he's been there. And he was healthy. He was healthier looking than I'd ever seen him in my whole life. That's what's wild. He was kind of thicker, he'd been eating. His hair was darker. And he was laughing, man. He was laughing. He was kind of being cool, trying to a little bit play it cool or be cool, I guess. I don't know. I mean, he lives in that world, in the subconscious or in dream world. So I have no idea what his life is like there. He may drive a Corvette. I don't know. I didn't see, the parking lot or anything like that. I just saw just him. I saw my dad in a dream. I hadn't seen him in 20 years. Even in a vision. I saw my dad in a dream. I hadn't seen him in 20 years. Even in a vision. Right when I got up, I've just been on this kick where I've just been trying to stay more motivated, and like when it's time to get up, it's time to get up, and I need to do things, and I want to have more experiences in my life. Recently I've just been realizing like I do a lot of stuff, but it's a lot of the same things, and I'm not really having a lot of like new experience, and so I want to have a little bit more of that. Man, I wish I'd have just laid back down and tried to go right back and see him, wherever he was. But it's just so funny. Man, I've slept in the past 20 years, I've probably fallen asleep in, 42 states and 15 or 20 or 30, countries. And not once did I see my father. And then, bam, I'm in Maui and there he is. So funny, man. I've slept in the past 20 years, I've probably fallen asleep in, 42 states and 15 or 20 or 30, countries. And not once did I see my father. And then, bam, I'm in Maui and there he is.
It's interesting that some people find science so easy and others find it kind of dull and difficult. Especially kids, some of them are just heated up. And I don't know why it is. It's the same perhaps for all subjects. For instance, lots of people love music and I never could carry a tune. I lose a great deal of pleasure out of that. And I think people lose a lot of pleasure who find science dull. In the case of science, I think that one of the things that make it very difficult, it takes a lot of imagination. It takes a lot of imagination. It's very hard to imagine all crazy things that things really are like. sweating is just jiggle and irregular motions, which is easy to kind of understand. It takes a lot of imagination. It's very hard to imagine all crazy things that things really are like. It takes a lot of imagination. It's very hard to imagine all crazy things that things really are like. And if you're used to balls bouncing, you know they slow up and stop after a while. But we have to imagine with the atoms a perfect elasticity. They never lose any energy. Every time they bounce, they keep on bouncing. They're perpetually moving. And that the things that happen when we say something loses energy, if a ball comes down and bounces, it shakes irregularly some of the atoms in the floor. And then when it comes up again, it leaves some of those atoms moving, jiggling. So as it bounces, it's passing its extra energies, its extra motions, to little patches on the floor each time it bounces, and loses a little each time. Until it settles down, we say, as if all the motion has stopped. But what's left is the floor is shaking more than it was before, and the atoms in the ball are shaking more than they were before. At the organized motion of all these atoms moving the same way, falling down, and the quiet floor is now transformed into a ball sitting on the ground. But all that emotion is still there in the form of the jiggling of the floor, which is a little bit warmer. But anybody who's hammered a great deal on something knows that it's true, that if you pound something, like you can feel the temperature difference, it heats up. It heats up simply because you're jiggling. It takes a lot of imagination. It's very hard to imagine all crazy things that things really are like. It takes a lot of imagination. It's very hard to imagine all crazy things that things really are like.
Akira.
He's got clout.
And what seems a good thing today turns out tomorrow to have been a disaster. What seemed in the moral and spiritual sphere too, like great virtues in times past, are easily seen today as hideous evil. Let's take, for example, the Inquisition.
In its own day, among Catholics, the Holy Inquisition was regarded as we today regard the practice of psychiatry. You see, you feel that in curing a person of cancer, almost anything is justified. The most complex operations, the most weird surgeries, people suspended for days and days on end the end of tubes with X-ray penetration, burning, people undergoing shock treatment, people locked in the colorless, monotonous corridor, the mental institutions. In all good faith, they knew that witchcraft, heresy, were terrible things. Awful plagues, imperiling people's souls forever and ever. So any means were justified to cure people of heresy. We don't change. We don't change. We're doing the same thing today, but under different names. We don't change. We're doing the same thing today, but under different names. We can look back at those people and see how evil that was. But we can't see it in ourselves. So therefore, beware. Today, but under different names. We don't change. We're doing the same thing today, under different names. We don't change. We're doing the same thing today, but under different names. We don't change. Same thing today. So therefore, beware. Virtue. So therefore, beware. Virtue.
Inspiration is perishable. When you have your inspiration, do it right then and there. Inspiration is perishable. When you have your inspiration, do it right then and there. This happens to me a lot with my tweet storms. I've actually come up with a whole bunch of additional tweet storms besides the ones that are already out there, but sometimes I just hesitate or I just pause and then it just dies. And what I've learned is if I'm inspired to write a blog post or to publish a tweet storm, I should probably do it right away. Otherwise it's not going to get out there. I won't come back to it. Inspiration is perishable. When you have your inspiration, do it right then and there. Inspiration is perishable. When you have your inspiration, do it right then and there. 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 Inspiration is perishable. When you have your inspiration, do it right then and there. Inspiration is a beautiful and powerful thing. And when you have it, just seize it. Inspiration is a beautiful and powerful thing. And when you have it, just seize it. Impatience with actions and patience with results. That's actually a good philosophy for life. Anything you have to do, just get it done. Why wait? You're not getting any younger. Your life is slipping away. You don't want to spend it waiting in line, traveling back and forth, doing things that you know ultimately aren't part of your mission. When you do them, you want to do them as quickly as you can while you do them well with your full attention. But then you just have to give up on the results. You have to be patient with the results because you're dealing with complex systems, you're dealing with lots of people. It takes a long time for markets to adopt products. It takes time for people to get comfortable working with each other. It takes time for great products to emerge as you polish away, polish away, polish away. Polish away, polish away, polish away. Polish away, polish away, polish away. Inspiration is perishable. When you have your inspiration, do it right then and there. Inspiration is perishable. When you have your inspiration, do it right then and there. 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 Inspiration is perishable. When you have your inspiration, do it right businesses that needs to be solved, I basically won't sleep until at least the resolution is in motion. And this is just personal failing, but if I'm on the board of a company, I'll call the CEO. If I'm running the company, I'll call my reports. If I'm responsible, I'll get on there right then and there and solve it. If I don't solve a problem the moment it happens, or I don't start moving towards solving it the moment it happens, I have no peace, I have no rest, I have no happiness until that problem is solved. So solve it as quickly as possible. I literally won't sleep until it's solved. So solve it as quickly as possible. I literally won't sleep until it's solved. Inspiration is perishable. When you have your inspiration, do it right then and there. Inspiration is perishable. When you have your inspiration, do it right then and there. 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 Inspiration is perishable. When you have your inspiration, do it right then and there. Characteristic, but it's worked out well in business.
I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted. And you would, of course, be able to alter your time sense and slip, say, 75 years of subjective time into 8 hours of sleep. You would, I suppose, start out by fulfilling all your wishes. You could design for yourself what would be the most ecstatic life. Love affairs, banquets, dancing girls, wonderful journeys, love affairs, banquets, dancing girls, wonderful journeys, gardens, music beyond belief. Music beyond belief. Music beyond belief. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted. Any dream you wanted. Any dream you wanted. Any dream you wanted. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted. And then after a couple of months of this sort of thing at 75 years a night, you would be getting a little taste for something different. You would move over to an adventurous dimension where there were certain dangers involved and the thrill of dealing with dangers. And you could rescue princesses from dragons and go on dangerous journeys, make wonderful explosions and blow them up. Eventually get into contests with enemies. And after you've done that for some time, you think up a new wrinkle to forget that you were dreaming, so that you would think it was all for real, and to be anxious about it, because it'd be so great when you woke up. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted. Any dream you wanted. Any dream you wanted. Any dream you wanted. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted. And then you'd say, well, like children who dare each other on things, how far out could you get? What could you take? What dimension of
being lost, of abandonment of your power, what dimension of that could you stand? You could ask yourself this because you know you'd eventually wake up. After you'd gone on doing this, you see, for some time, you would suddenly find yourself sitting around in this room with all your personal involvement, problems, etc., talking with me. How do you know if that's not what you're doing? Could be. Because after all, what would you do if you were God? I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted. Any dream you wanted. Any dream you wanted. Any dream you wanted. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted to. I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted to. 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 I wonder what you would do if you had the power to dream any dream you wanted to. What would you do if you were God? 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 What would you do if you were God?
If you want a thing bad enough to go out and fight for it, work day and night for it, give up your time and your peace and your sleep for it. If only desire of it makes you quite mad enough never to tire of it. If only desire of it makes you quite mad enough never to tire of it. Makes you hold all other things, tawdry and cheap for it. Hold all other things, tawdry and cheap for it. If life seems all empty and useless without it, and all that you scheme and you dream is about it. If gladly you'll sweat for it, fret for it, plan for it, lose all your terror of God or of man for it. If you want anything bad enough to go out and fight for it, work day and night for it, give up your time and your peace and your sleep for it. If only desire of it makes you quite mad enough never to tire of it. If you want anything bad enough to go out and fight for it, work day and night for it, give up your time and your peace and your sleep for it. If only desire of it makes you quite mad enough never to tire of it. Life seems all empty and useless without it, and all that you scheme and you dream is about it. If gladly you'll sweat for it, fret for it, plan for it, lose all your terror of God or of man for it. If you'll simply go after the thing that you want with all your capacity, strength and sagacity, faith, hope and confidence, stern pertinacity. If neither cold poverty vanished in joy, nor sickness, no pain, a body and brain can turn you away from the thing that you want. If dogged and grim you besiege and beset, if dogged and grim you besiege and beset, if dogged and grim you besiege and beset, you'll get. If you
What were you like when I was 25? Well, I was obsessed. When I was 25 or so, I probably weighed about 138 pounds. I smoked like a pack of cigarettes a day. I drank a tremendous amount of alcohol. My friends were heavy drinkers, and most of them dropped out of school by the time they were 15 or 16, went off to work on oil rigs, and it was a rough town, and we drank a lot. I started when I was 14, and I had a lot of bad habits, and I wasn't in great shape physically. I was also still intellectually obsessed, as I am now. That would have been in 85. But I decided around then, about 85, 84, something like that, that I was really going to try to get my act together. So I started doing that. First of all, I quit smoking. Well, that took a long time because I eventually had to quit drinking too in order to quit smoking. And I started working out, started playing sports, which I'd never done. I was a small kid. I'd been skipped a grade, and I was small for my age, so sports were never really a domain of expertise for me. Although I skied and went tromping with my dad, tromping with my dad, tromping with my tromping with my tromping with my dad, tromping with my dad, tromping with my dad, tromping with my tromping with my tromping with my dad, tromping with my dad, tromping with my dad, tromping with my tromping with my tromping with my dad, tromping with my dad, tromping with my dad, tromping with my tromping with my tromping with my dad.
What kind of relationship do you have with your father? Your real father? It's often ambivalent, right? There's an element of him that encouraged you, hopefully, because without the encouragement of your father, man, the world is a dismal place. It's very difficult to be a courageous person unless you have your father in body and spirit behind you. Because if your father rejects you or doesn't form a relationship with you, it's as if the spirit of civilization has left you outside the walls as of little worth. It's very difficult for people to recover from that. So the father should be an encouraging force, but can be a tyrannical and crushing force. That's a very difficult thing to get right. If you're my son, then I should impose the highest standards of behavior on you. And I should always be judging what you're doing. I should be judging it with the aim of making the best in you come forward. But getting that balance exactly right is very difficult. It's like the mother who's too overprotective. I'll never let anything happen to you. It's like, well, maybe you actually want to have something happen to you. It's like, no, I'm going to make you strong so any number of things can happen to you. And when you need some care, I'll be there. But otherwise, like out into the world with you, that's the right attitude. And for the father, it's like, get your bloody act together.
Tromping with my dad, tromping with my dad, tromping with my tromping with my tromping with my dad, tromping with my dad, tromping with my dad, tromping with my tromping with my tromping with my dad, tromping with my dad, tromping with my dad, tromping with my tromping with my tromping with my dad, tromping with my dad, tromping with my dad, tromping with my tromping with my tromping with my dad.
I'm on your side. It's not because I want to destroy you or demean you or push you down in the dominance hierarchy, but because I want the best in you to emerge. And so you need standards. It's like, what are you doing wasting your life? There's way more than that to you. Get your act together and bring it out. And that's a message that people really want to hear if they have any sense at all. And generally they do want to hear it. One of the things you could do for young people that no one's doing is to talk to them about responsibility. Everyone talks to young people about rights. It's like, we need our rights. It's like, oh God, how many rights do you need? You know, really, like you have more privileges than any people who've ever lived anywhere. Well, it's so dull to hear that. It's so dull. It's so pathetic and demeaning that you have to be protected and have your rights. There's a huge marketplace for responsibility. That's what you want to talk to young people about. It's like life has meaning with responsibility. The more responsibility you take on, the more meaning your life has. And the higher degree of responsibility that you agree voluntarily to try to bear, the richer your life will be. And no one's ever told that, and it's the case.
Tromping with my dad, tromping with my dad, tromping with my tromping with my tromping with my dad, tromping with my dad, tromping with my dad, tromping with my tromping with my tromping with my dad, tromping with my dad, tromping with my dad, tromping with have responsibility. You're going to have meaning. It's going to be rough, you know, because it's complicated. You have a complicated job and you try to help the careers of the people around you. You try to solve tough problems and aid suffering and do all of that. It's like, it's weight. It's responsibility. There's glory in it. There's real glory in it. There's deep meaning in it. And young people are starving for that because no one ever tells them that. It's like, you're way more than you think. Man, stand up. Do something difficult. Do something difficult and heroic. Burst out of your bonds. It's like, that's a good message. That's a necessary message. Because we have to be more than we are. Because if we don't, we're not going to survive.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
You're way more than you think, man. Stand up. Do something difficult. Do something difficult and heroic. Burst out of your bonds. It's like, that's a good message.
All right, at long last, the user interface for reality. Some of these things you're going to say, hey, I've heard about those. First, you must accept the frame, at least as a filter, that there could be a subjective reality and that you can manipulate it. You should accept that systems work better than goals. People are telling me every day that they implemented systems and it changed their life. This is one of the biggest buttons on the interface for life. If you don't like where you are and you want to go somewhere else, learn how to build systems for everything from your diet to your career to your social life, fitness, everything. Talent stacking. The idea that if you intelligently add new talents, you become not just a little bit better, but exponentially better because talents really explode your capability and your options. So this is one of the biggest buttons on the interface to reality. It feels like it works. It feels like it works. It feels like it works. The interface to reality. It feels like it works. It feels like it works. It feels like it works. Affirmations, the idea of writing down or visualizing your goals, seems to be something that gives you the impression that it works. And I say that very carefully. Does it work? Do affirmations change reality? I don't know. I don't know. I can tell you that when I've used them, the results I've gotten don't seem like anything could have been natural. I cured an incurable voice problem. I had ridiculous stock market luck when I used the affirmations. My career, as I told you, is just crazy. The interface to reality. It feels like it works. It feels like it works. It feels like it works. The interface to reality. It feels like it works, but I'm not going to tell you it does. You should see these as filters. If it feels like it works, keep doing it. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. If it feels like it works, keep doing it. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. The interface to reality. It feels like it works. It feels like it works. It feels like it works. The interface to reality. It feels like it works, but I'm not going to tell you it does. You should see these as filters.
There is only one way to salvation, and that is to make yourself responsible for all men's sins. As soon as you make yourself responsible in all sincerity for everything and for everyone, you will see at once that this is really so, and that you are in fact to blame for everyone and for all things.
Dostoevsky, I think, said something like, every man is responsible for everything that happens to him and everything that happens to everyone else. Every man is responsible for everything that happens to him and everything that happens to everyone else. Every man is responsible for everything that happens to him and everything that happens to everyone else. Every man is responsible for everything that happens to him and everything that happens to everyone else. It's a crazy statement, right? It's a crazy statement, and he was a pretty extreme person in many, many ways. But there's a level at which that's metaphysically true. You know, because what happens is that it's failure to act often that's the most catastrophic. It's to not do the right thing when the situation presents itself. It's very specific. You know, you're constantly in situations where you could do the right thing if you were willing to take a risk that's actually of relatively moderate size. And you know that you can take the risk, and you know that you should take the risk, and you don't. Every man is responsible for everything that happens to him and everything that happens to everyone else. Every man is responsible for everything that happens to him and everything that happens to everyone else. Every man is responsible for everything that happens to him and everything that happens to everyone else. Every man is responsible for everything that happens to him and everything that happens to everyone else. What happens is the thing that they didn't oppose grows a little bit, and they shrink a little bit, and that starts a loop, eh? And so, and you say, well, how do you take responsibility for the world? And the answer is, well, you also have to do it with a certain degree of humility, because what do you know? Let's say you want to sort out your room and beautify it, and let's say that all you have is just a little room, like you're not rich, but you've got your damn room and you've got the space right in front of you that's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. You've got this space right in front of you, space right in front of you, space right in front of you, but you've got your damn room and you've got this space right in front of you that's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. Well, a room is a place to sleep, and so if you set your room up properly, then you figure out how to sleep and when you should sleep and how you should sleep, and you figure out when you should wake up, and then you figure out, well, what clothes you should wear, because they have to be arranged properly in your dresser, and then you have to have some place to put your clothes. If you're going to have some clothes, you have to figure out what you're going to wear those clothes to do, right? And then that means you have to figure out what you're going to do, and then your room has to serve that purpose, because otherwise it isn't set up properly. And if it doesn't serve your purposes, you will be unhappy and not happy in the room, because the way that we perceive the world is as a place to move from point A to point B in. You've got your damn room and you've got the space right in front of you, space right in front of you, space right in front of you. You've got your damn room and you've got the space right in front of you that's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. You've got your damn room and you've got the space right in front of you, space right in front of you, space right in front of you. You've got your damn room and you've got the space right in front of you that's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. And so what it means to set up your room is that you have to have somewhere to go that's worthwhile. The next thing is, well, maybe you have to make it beautiful, but that's not easy, right? That means you have to have some taste, and that doesn't mean you have to have money. It doesn't, because you can be garish with money and you can be tasteful with nothing. You have to be creative in order to do that. And so then to beautify your room means that you also have to develop your capacity to be creative. And so then you can make your room shine. You've got your damn room and you've got this space right in front of you, space right in front of you, space right in front of you. You've got your damn room and you've got this space right in front of you that's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. You've got your damn room and you've got this space right in front of you, space right in front of you, space right in front of you. You've got your damn room and you've got this space right in front of you that's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. happen is that if your family isn't together, they will interfere with that. When you start building this little microcosm of perfection, it'll evoke all the pathologies of everyone in your household. They'll wonder what the hell you're up to in there. And they won't necessarily be happy, because if they're in a lowly place, the higher you move out of that, the more the place they're in looks bad. And you might say, well, what they should do is celebrate your victory over chaos and evil, but that isn't what will happen. What will happen instead is that they will attempt to pull you back down. And so what that means is that if you organize your room, then you're going to have to confront the devils in your house. And that's often a terrifying thing, because some of those devils have lineages that go back many, many generations. And God only knows what you have to struggle with in order to overcome that. You've got your damn room, and you've got this space right in front of you. Space right in front of you. Space right in front of you. You've got your damn room, and you've got this space right in front of you. It's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. You've got your damn room, and you've got this space right in front of you. Space right in front of you. Space right in front of you. You've got your damn room, and you've got this space right in front of you. It's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. It's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. It's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. It's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. It's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. It's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. It's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. It's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. It's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. And so to sort yourself out and to fix up your room is a non-trivial matter, you know.
If a beautiful lady should say to me, I love you, and I were to reply, are you serious or are you just playing with me?
That would be quite the wrong response. Because I hope she's not serious and that she will play with me. I should say, are you sincere or are you just toying? Because you see, the word play has many different senses. The person who is playing the organ in church is certainly not doing something trivial. When you go to see a play called Hamlet, you're not seeing something trivial. When the concert artist plays Mozart, he is certainly entertaining you, but it's not a trivial entertainment. But on the other hand, we would use play in quite a different sense, when we mean just fooling around, doing it for kicks. Kicks. Doing it for kicks. Doing it for kicks. So it is fundamental, as a matter of fact, to both the Hindu and the Christian tradition, that the universe is the play of God. But the Christian thinks of it in the terms of construction play, like building blocks. The Hindu thinks of it as dramatic play, of the actual participation of the Godhead in the creation, so that every being whatsoever is God in disguise, doing it for kicks. God in disguise. Kicks. God in disguise, doing it for kicks. God in disguise, doing it for kicks. Doing it for kicks. God in disguise. Kicks. God in disguise, doing it for kicks. God in disguise, doing it for kicks.
Men don't struggle for power. That isn't what men do. Not if they're civilized. They size each other up and elect the competent to lead them. And they do that at every level of society. I worked in a rail crew in southern Saskatchewan. They're rough guys, like a lot of them have been in prison, you know. And when you first came onto the rail crew, you got a stupid nickname and people teased you. And I remember this one kid called Lunch Bucket. That was his nickname because he came to the rail crew with a lunch bucket that looked like his mom had packed it. That was a bad idea. So they named him Lunch Bucket, which he wasn't very happy about. Well, that was a mistake. He should have taken it with a smile. And then he was always peevish and irritable. And if you asked him to do something, he'd whine. And I remember this one kid called Lunch. Soon, there's about 60 men on this crew. It stretched out about a quarter of a mile down the tracks. Soon, anonymous harassers were throwing pebbles at him during work. We had hard hats on, so the game was, let's see if we can hit a lunch bucket in the hard hat with a pebble. And then that was purposeful because he couldn't take a joke. It's like, well, let's see if he can take this joke. Clunk. And then it just got more and more peevish, and the pebbles got bigger and 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 bigger. And, you know, a week later, lunch bucket was gone. Having not learned anything from the experience. But, you know, the men were testing him out. It's like, can you take a joke? Can you be useful? Can you at least be amusing? Is there something worthwhile about you? It's like, no. It's like, okay, well then, you're out of here. Because you never know when we actually might need to depend on you. It's like, can you take a joke? Can you be useful? Can you at least be amusing? Is there something worthwhile about you?
Instructive to go to a professional professor's meeting. In my field, which is philosophy, you go to a congress of philosophers, and you'll find when they all get together in the bar or in the restaurant in somebody's room, the one thing they don't talk about is philosophy. It is very bad form indeed to show interest in philosophy among your colleagues. The same is exactly true in clergy gatherings. They don't talk about religion. What they both talk about is politics. Church politics and academic politics. Because it's bad form to be brilliant on faculty. Because it outclasses your colleagues. Therefore, faculty people tend to cultivate the study mediocrity. Watch out for that. I mean, if you get mobs of students coming to your lectures, you get pretty black looks from your colleagues. But you see what it is? It's scholarship about scholarship, not scholarship. Just as learning, because learning is good for you, is irrelevant to learning. The whole idea of improving yourself by learning is irrelevant to the learning process. And in the same way, doing business is doing business. Doing business, such as manufacturing clothes, is a very good thing to do. I could conceive that it would be extremely enjoyable, something one could be very proud of, to make good clothes. Of course you need to sell them, because you need to eat. But to make clothes to make money raises another question. Because then your interest is not in making clothes, it's in making money, and then you're going to cheat on the clothes. And then you get an awful lot of money and you don't know what to do with it. The study mediocrity.
Jung had a tremendous humor. And he knew that nobody can be completely honest. You will try and have a great deal of success exploring your motivation and your dark, unconscious depths. That nobody can be completely honest. You will try and have a great deal of success, but there will be a certain point at which you will say, well, I've had enough of that. Do you see how, in a strange way, there's a certain sanity in that? When a person indulges in a certain kind of duplicity, of deception, there is something, you all laughed when I said that. There was something humorous about it. And this humor is a very funny thing. Basically, humor is an attitude of laughter about oneself. There is malicious humor, which is laughing at other people. But real deep humor is laughter at oneself. Now, why fundamentally do you laugh about yourself? What makes you laugh about yourself? Isn't it because you know that there is a big difference between what goes on the outside and what goes on the inside? That if I hint, you see, that your inside is the opposite of your outside, it makes people laugh. If I don't do it unkindly. If I get up in the attitude of a preacher and say, you're a bunch of miserable sinners and you ought to be different, nobody laughs. But if I say, well, after all, boys will be boys, and girls will be girls, and we all know, then people laugh. Nobody can be completely honest. You will try and have a great deal of success exploring your motivation and your dark, unconscious depths. That nobody can be completely honest. You will try and have a great deal of success, but there will be a certain point at which you will say, well, I've had enough of that. Now, you see, what's happening when we do that? Now, I passed you around a lot of embroidery to look at before we started. And I'm perfectly sure that you got the point. That there's a big difference between the front and the back. In some forms of embroidery, the back is very different from the front because people take shortcuts. In the front, everything is orderly, and it is supposed to be kind of messy on the back side. See, which side will you wear? You've got to be sure you get the front in front and the back in the back. The back has all the little tricks in it, all the shortcuts, all the lowdown that people don't acknowledge. And it's exactly the same with the way we live. You know, like sweeping the dust under the carpet in a hurry just before the guests come. I mean, we do ever so many things like that. And if you don't do it, if you don't think you do it, and you think, well, really, my embroidery is the same on both sides, see? Well, you're deceiving yourself. Because what you're doing is you're taking the shortcuts in another dimension, which you're keeping out of consciousness. Everybody takes the shortcuts. Everybody plays tricks. Everybody has in himself an element of duplicity, of deception. Because you see, from this point of view that I'm discussing, where the web is the trap, to be is to deceive. Nobody can be completely honest. You will try and have a great deal of success exploring your motivation and your dark, unconscious depths. That nobody can be completely honest. You will try and have a great deal of success, but there will be a certain point at which you will say, well, I've had enough of that. To be
To be is to deceive. To be is to deceive. To be
Akira.
The dawn
is to deceive.
He's got clout.
These are the buttons for the user interface. These are the buttons for the user interface.
First, you must accept the frame, at least as a filter. You should accept that systems work better than goals. Systems work better than goals. Talent stacking, affirmations, the mating instinct, fear, curiosity, novelty, contrast, repetition and simplicity, repetition and simplicity, repetition and simplicity, repetition and simplicity, the fake because, pacing leading, aspiration, association, pattern recognition, visualization, pattern recognition, visualization. These are the buttons for the user interface. These are the buttons for the user interface. First, you must accept the frame, at least as a filter. You should accept that systems work better than goals. Systems work better than goals. Talent stacking, affirmations, the mating instinct, fear, curiosity, novelty, contrast, repetition and simplicity, repetition and simplicity, repetition and simplicity, repetition and simplicity, fake because, pacing leading, aspiration, association, pattern recognition, visualization, pattern recognition, visualization. These are the buttons for the user interface. 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 This is my lesson. I hope this was useful. This is the sort of lesson that might not change you tonight, but it's never going to leave you. But it's never going to leave you. Once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. You're all changed. You don't know it yet. And this will become sort of a, let's say, a framework that you now have added to your mental map. And now when you see things that fit that framework, it will get stronger over time. And so you'll see that this view of the world will take root, and then every time you compare it to the old way you saw, you're going to say to yourself, wow, is that a coincidence? Because this new way of looking at the world just feels like it predicts better. But I'll keep an eye on it. So this will get stronger and stronger over time, and maybe never stop getting stronger. These are the buttons for the user interface. 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 Feel free to refer back to this often, and I think you've got everything you need now to author your own life. You're no longer a victim of reality. You are no longer the subject of reality. You're now an author. You're now an author. You're no longer a victim of reality. You are no longer the subject of reality. You're now an author. Some of you were already authors, and now you're better authors. For those of you who didn't know you could be an author of your reality, well, you just found out. And I will leave you on that, and you can have a terrific night tonight. And the rest of your life, it's looking good.
Think of camouflage. The chameleon who changes its color. Think of the butterfly pretending it has eyes. Think of the flower saying to the bee, "Like my honey?" The bee says, "Wow." But then that means that the bee has to be. It has to go on living, and all the trouble it takes to go around collecting honey and raising other bees and organizing itself and doing that dance which tells the other bees where there's more honey. There's all that stuff to do. But the flower was deceptive. Saying to the bee, "Like my honey." Life is a drama, and a drama is a deception. It's a big act. But then that means that the bee has to be. When you peel an onion and you don't really understand the nature of an onion, you might look for the pit in the center, like any ordinary fruit has. But the onion doesn't have a center. It's all skins. So when you get right down, there's nothing but a bunch of skins. You say, well, that was kind of disappointing. But of course you have to understand that the skins are the part that you eat. When you peel an onion and you don't really understand the nature of an onion, you might look for the pit in the center, like any ordinary fruit has. But the onion... Well, in rather the same way, see, you find when you explore yourself and your motivation, you go through and through and you try to find out that thing which really is genuine. That thing which really is genuine. Well, in rather the same way, see, you find when you explore yourself and your motivation, you go through and you try to find out that thing which really is genuine. That thing which really is genuine. That's why in Zen discipline, they give you koans which require a perfectly genuine act. An act of total and absolute sincerity. And people knock themselves out trying to do this thing. But they always know that the master's going to catch them. Because he reads their thought. You know that story of von Kleist about the man who had a fight with a bear, and the bear would read his thoughts? So that the only way of hitting the bear was to do so not on purpose. Because the bear would know in advance. So it's the same in working with a Zen master. You have to do the genuine act, not on purpose. But since you are put in a situation where it's rather formal, and you're supposed to do it on purpose, you're stuck, see? So you explore the onion, and you go in and in and in, and then you find, well, it's all a deception. Well, in rather the same way, see, you find when you explore yourself and your motivation, you go through and through and you try to find out that thing which really is genuine. That thing which really is genuine. Well, in rather the same way, see, you find when you explore yourself your motivation. You go through and through and you try to find out that thing which really is genuine. That thing which really is genuine.
Something I've been thinking about a lot. It's this notion of the clouds and the dirt. Meaning, I don't spend any time on the things that don't matter, and what doesn't matter is basically everything in between the overall vision and strategy and the real knowledge of it.
Clouds. The clouds are the high-end philosophy and beliefs that are at the heart of everything I am personally and everything I do professionally. Personally, it's really simple. Family first. Professionally, it's not that much different. 99% of what we deal with doesn't matter. If you religiously follow just a few core philosophies that mean most to you, everything else will naturally fall into place. Being an actual practitioner, it's the hard work. Being a good spouse, parent, son, sibling, and friend. Professionally, it's knowing my craft. I'm super not interested in being fancy. I'm willing to work. I'm never going to forget what I'm about, and I do unscalable, not the right use of my time shit 50% of my day, every day, for the rest of my life, because I love the fucking clouds and dirt. I love the fucking clouds and dirt. Clouds, dirt. Clouds, I love the fucking clouds and dirt. Clouds and dirt. Clouds, dirt. Clouds, dirt. People don't understand is the dirt is so important because unless you actually have the skills, your reputation or what you did the day before or who your mama isn't going to impact your success. Your success is going to be predicated by the dirt, and the dirt is a mixture of having the work ethic to get your hands dirty and then the experience predicated from actually doing the work. If you're not working on your craft, if you got too fancy to keep doing your thing, you lose. It's why I love comedians that still go to small clubs. Seinfeld, in his prime, just going to bullshit clubs in the middle of America and working on his craft. It's dirt. It's never getting too fancy to get away from what got you there in the first place. That's how people lose. Clouds and dirt. I love the fucking clouds and dirt. Clouds, dirt. Clouds, I love the fucking clouds and dirt. Clouds and dirt. Clouds, dirt. Clouds, dirt. There are too many people who are average at what they do and then confused by their average results. Everyone has their own definition of clouds and dirt. But if there's any advice that I can offer you that will change the entire trajectory of your career, it's to start pushing at both edges. Raise the bar of your business philosophy. Dig deeper into your craft. You want to make sure that you're equally an architect and a mason. You've got to be able to simultaneously think at a high level and get your hands dirty. After it. Clouds and dirt. Clouds and dirt. Clouds, dirt. Clouds, I love the fucking clouds and dirt. Clouds and dirt. Clouds, dirt. Clouds, dirt. A lot of times people don't have one or the other. They're too stuck in the minutia, they don't see the bigger picture, they don't know how to navigate, or they get it philosophically, but they don't have the skills or the appetite to actually be able to do it right. You know the details, you know the philosophy, and don't worry about all the minutia in the middle, the politics, the
think of present events as being caused by past events. And therefore, we tend to regard ourselves as the puppets of the past, as driven along by something that is always behind us. Now, to overcome this impression, it's very simple. You begin again with an experiment. Approach the world through your ears. If you shut your eyes and make contact with reality purely with your ears, and you will realize that the sounds you are hearing are all coming out of silence. You hear, and it fades away. Fades, 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 and finally disappears. It's a curious world, this, isn't it? Because you hear all the realities in it. The sounds suddenly coming out of nothing. You don't see any reason for them to begin. They just appear, and then they echo away through the corridors of the mind, which we call memory. Now, if you open your eyes, it's a little harder to see this with your eyes because, unlike sounds, the eyes sound static. Or rather, they look static. Everything looks still to your eyes. But you must understand, the world you are looking at, say when you look at a light, that light is vibrating. All material things are vibrations, and they are vibrating at you now in the same way as the sound is vibrating on your ears. In other words, the present world that you see is a vibration coming just as the sound comes out of silence. The light is coming out of space. It's coming out of nothing straight at you now and echoing away into the past. So the course of time is really very much like the course of a ship in the ocean. Here's the ship, you see, and it leaves behind it a wake. And the wake fades out, and that tells us where the ship has been, in just the same way as the past and our memory of the past tells us what we have done. But as we go back into the past, and we go back and back to prehistory, and we use all kinds of instruments and scientific methods for detecting what happened, we eventually reach a point where all record of the past fades away in just the same way as the wake of the ship. Now, the important thing to remember in this illustration is that the wake doesn't drive the ship any more than the tail wags the dog.
skills, you said that you should learn to sell, learn to build. If you can do both, you will be unstoppable.
This is a very broad category. There's two broad categories. One is building the product, which is hard, and it's multivariate. That can include design, that can include development, that can include manufacturing, logistics, procurement. It could even be designing and operating a service. It has many, many definitions, but in every industry, there is a definition of the builder, the seller, the builder.